A Guten Erev Shabbos. As the rally on Tuesday was winding down, and the crowd of almost 300,000 people was singing Achenu, the tune that Pesach leads us in on Yom Kippur that you all know and love, a guy struck up a conversation with me. He was from Detroit. He was a teacher in some kind of yeshiva. We didn't get into that. He told me he'd spoken with some rabbis from Lakewood, which is a large very large Lithuanian-style yeshiva in South Jersey. They showed him some cards that they had brought from their yeshiva and distributed to people in the crowd, I suppose, although they didn't bring enough for me to see one of them. My new friend from Detroit said the cards had 3 brachas, 3 blessings on them that these people had prepared for the rally. The first bracha was the bracha that is said when the Messiah arrives. What's the bracha? I asked him, because I don't know. He didn't either, and he didn't catch it. I said it would be pretty funny, pretty ironic, if the Messiah were to arrive, and he and I would have to ask these guys from Lakewood, what's the right bracha? The second bracha is recited when you see 600,000 Jews gathered together in one place. The third bracha was Shehecheyanu. About that one, I expressed a little skepticism, and I'll tell you why. Let's go in backward order of these 3 blessings. Shehecheyanu, we've been privileged to say together many times. We say it on occasions that come periodically, seasonally, annually, or occasionally. We say it together, Pesach leads us, at Kol Nidre. We say it at the Seder, at Kiddush, which is when we normally say it on a Yom Tif. Over the years, we've merited to make a Pidyon Ben or 2 in our community, and Shehecheyanu was said there also. When you eat a new fruit for the first time in that season, it occasions a Shehecheyanu, and even putting on a new suit of clothes, or a dress, or a garment that brings you particular joy, you can say Shehecheyanu. There's one footnote to this bracha, pardon the pun. We do not say Shehecheyanu for new shoes, because shoes used to always be made of leather, which means an animal was slaughtered to make those shoes. And we cannot say Shehecheyanu over something that results from the taking of a life. That rule right there tells you much of what you need to know about the Jewish people. Whatever joy we have is not real joy. It's not a Shehecheyanu if death is involved. And it was the cruel, horrible deaths of so many Israelis that brought us together at this rally this week in Washington, D.C. So, a little dose of skepticism on that Shehecheyanu. The second bracha on this fascinating sheet that I never saw, but only heard about, was the bracha for seeing 600,000 Jews gathered together in one place. Now, you know, we don't count the Jews, unless God tells us to. We don't count 1, 2, 3, 4 for a minyan. We look around the room and we use a verse or a sentence that has 10 words in it. Hoshia es amecha uvarech es nachlasecha. The bracha of Hamotzi lechem min haaretz also has 10 words. We're careful not to count the Jews because Gemara in Yoma tells us that it diminishes our strength when you do that. It's an ayin hara. Yet, at the beginning and end of the book of Numbers, in other languages it's called the book of countings, the beginning and end, God tells Moshe to count the Jews. There's a census at the beginning of the book and at the end, and it chafes some people that only the men are counted. Really, it has to do with counting the available troops for battle. You have to know what kind of army you can field for a war. Notice that only men of age to shoulder arms are counted. Counting everyone, it's more like a couple of million. And the Levites, who don't fight, are counted separately. Anyway, the 600,000 who were counted there are parallel to the 600,000 who stood at Mount Sinai with one heart. And another parallel is that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah before you go counting them up. Remember, you have to count both the black letters and the white letters to get to that number. The acrostic, by the way, for remembering that is Yesh Shishim Ribuy Oisias La Torah. There are 600,000 letters of the Torah. The initials of that phrase, Yud, Shin, Resh, Aleph, Lam, it spells out Yisrael. In other words, we are all in this together. So, What bracha would you make if you witnessed that kind of gathering? Spoiler alert, we did not witness that amount of Jews gathered together on Tuesday. Notwithstanding the rule that you're not supposed to count, we do want the world to take note when we get together, when we read in the paper that 100,000 gather in London to burn Israeli flags and shout and chant terrible things about the Jews and about Israel. We ask ourselves, can't we get together, at least that many people, for peace? Well, the newspapers that are not so kindly disposed to us kept saying tens of thousands expected to rally for Israel on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And they kept that headline, apparently, even after the turnout turned out to be much larger. They got the figure. The rumor went because the permit that the organizers applied for to the National Park Service listed 60,000 as the expected attendance. The rumor went further that they had applied for a permit for the entire National Mall, from the Congress at one end to the Washington Monument in the middle, opposite the White House, to the far end, the Lincoln Memorial, site of many other famous gatherings over the years. By the way, speaking of the White House, our Mendy came with a group from Yeshiva University and shared pictures of a beautiful Rosh Chodesh minyan that convened in front of the White House. And Mi Ka'amcha Yisrael, who was like your people Israel? Someone organized a Daf Yomi shir, a group study of the daily page of Talmud at 5:45 in the morning before sunup, before the minyan, in front of the White House. Now that is a Jewish protest. What are we going to do? We're going to the White House and we're going to get together and study a page of Jewish law there. That's what we're going to do. If you want to get into the subtlety of it, the daily daf, the page of Talmud being studied that day, was from Tractate Bava Kama, which speaks about your liability, your responsibility, when you or your property causes injury or damage to someone else. That's how we were protesting in front of the White House, with a page of Talmud that teaches about our responsibility and liability to others in society. Umi ka'amcha Yisrael, who was like your people Israel. So on to the numbers game. There would have been thousands more, but there were a number of incidents with people, groups, having problems getting there. I don't know how many buses came from Toronto. Must have been a couple of dozen. From the schools mainly. There were a lot of teenagers and university students there. It was a beautiful sight to see. Each school had matching sweatshirts made up, so they could find each other in the crowd. You could easily see who was from this school and that school. My friends from Boston had a lot of trouble getting their plane to land, and they only arrived for the last 15 minutes. Others from Detroit landed, but the bus drivers who'd been hired to drive them to the rally walked off the job. They refused to shuttle people to a pro-Israel rally. We'll see you in court, folks. I guess they didn't realize that the Jewish people know a few good attorneys. There were 2 chartered flights from Toronto, and for some reason that we haven't figured out yet, they were not given landing rights at any of the DC airports. We'll wait to hear more on that story. But of the people who did make it, I was on the 3rd Toronto flight of the morning with many, many people who headed to the rally. The numbers that the organizers announced was, Kan Ayin Hara, 290,000, which, let's round it up and say, about 300,000. And that, my friends, means that nearly 1 out of every 20 Jews on this continent, 4+% of Jews in North America, showed up in Washington, D.C. in support of Israel and to bring the hostages home. By all accounts, it was the largest gathering of Jews in history in this hemisphere. But we digress. What bracha should you make if you witness, may we witness for good things, that large a number of Jews gathered together, 600,000? I asked a few people who didn't know about this bracha, and their guesses were beautiful and insightful, thoughtful. The bracha which we did not get to say, you have in your Sidurim. Take a look if you have it on page 229, under brachas for other phenomena. What to say to acknowledge God when you witness thunder or lightning or a rainbow, or you look out the plane window and you see the ocean. The first bracha at the top of the next page is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. Blessed are you, God, sovereign of the universe, Chacham Harazim. Blessed are you, God, the knower of secrets. I think this is a tremendously moving bracha. And again, it shows in a few words who we are. The Gemara in Berachos, which we learned together, explains that there are 600,000 different types of intellect. So in a crowd of that many people, most probably all types of human intellect are all represented. And yet, God knows each one of them and more. Or because we are all different, and God knows each of our beings. And the Shekhinah, the divine presence, certainly rests in a very special and distinguished way on such an assemblage. And as to the question of what does it all mean, why is this happening to us? Why is this still happening to us? With all our strength, why are we still the target of so much hatred? How can we change it? And one of my biggest questions, why does it take hatred and violence and war and an existential threat to bring us all together? We do not know the answer to these great questions, but there will be an answer, and one day we trust that God will help us to understand, because God knows the secrets. Baruch Chacham Harazim. Which brings us to the third bracha, the blessing to say when the Messiah arrives. Your Art Scroll Siddur quite cleverly sneaks them all in there, but it doesn't label them as blessings for greeting the Messiah. That's why it's good we're having this conversation, so you'll know where to look when the time comes. The Messiah will be the King of the Jews, the real one. So we say the bracha for a king at the bottom of page 229. Blessed are you, who is given of his glory to human beings. The Messiah will also be a great Torah scholar. So 2 brachas above the king bracha, it says, Baruch shechalak mechachmasai li'reiav. Blessed is God, who gives of his knowledge to those in awe of him. If you turn over to the next page, you'll see the bracha we spoke about, Chacham Harazim. When you see 600,000 Jews in one place, as surely all the Jews will be there to greet the Messiah. And on page 231 is still another bracha, Baruch Matziv Gevul Almanah. It's listed surreptitiously as when you see a synagogue that was destroyed and later restored to its former glory. You say, blessed are you who restores a widow to her home. But really, we'll say that when the Messiah arrives, when the city of Jerusalem, who we always talk about on Tisha B'Av as a widow, is restored to her grandeur and glory. And one more bracha that we've practiced because we say it every morning, and also over the cup, the second cup of wine at the Seder. Baruch atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. Blessed are you, God, who redeems Israel, because on that day we will be redeemed from everything. Now, why did people think that the Messiah might come last Tuesday, so that they had to be ready with these brachas, ready to say? Maybe it has something to do with Chacham Harazim. Blessed is God, the knower of secrets. We're all different people. We all have different experiences and insights, leading to different perspectives and attitudes. And God knows where we all fit in, where it all comes together, where we all hold on to each other. We were talking as we were waiting to board our flight at Pearson that morning about how these times have been so unstabilizing, so full of doubt and anxiety. I hate to bring it up to you, but if you think back to the weeks and months before October 7th, Jews were so bitterly divided among ourselves about government in Israel and who was in and who was out and who was making choices and who would get to make choices in the future and who would decide who gets to make those choices. We were really beating each other up. Thankfully, only figuratively. As far as I heard, no one laid a hand on anybody else. But the division was very bitter and very scary. And then, on that awful morning when the earth shook with an eruption of death and terror and violation and anti-Semitism and hatred, and all the ground we thought we were standing on so firmly to proclaim our own righteousness shook frightfully, and we all lost our footing, and we all grabbed onto each other. To this day, we're still holding on to each other tightly. Those of us here, those of us in Israel, those of us on the left, those of us on the right, the secular and the religious, the Haredi and the Kibbutznik, are all holding so tightly to one another for dear life to keep our balance as we reel from a world that revealed its madness in that one awful morning. That, I think, is the secret that God knows. that we're coming to know. That the real safety and security is us holding on to each other, and all of us holding on to God, and God holding on to us, all very tightly. Why does it take a calamity for us to hold on to each other? Why does each of us think that we can make it without the others, who are obviously wrong and misguided and brainwashed? Why only in these worst of times do we instantly figure out that being together is far more important than who's right and who's wrong? Baruch Chacham Harazim. Blessed is God who knows these secrets. It was a terrible, horrible event and its aftermath of wounded and captive that brought 300,000 of us together in one place, with who knows how many hundreds of thousands watching us online. You can watch the whole rally on YouTube. The link is in your email from Thursday. Everyone there was smiling. Everyone was glad to be together. American politicians from the left and the right were there, and each and every one said that anti-Semitism has no place here, and no one should be afraid, and they all said, we stand with Israel. Someone said it was a high watermark in history for Israel and against hatred of the Jews. There were celebrities and actors and foreign ambassadors. There were so many Jews of so many political and social loyalties and affiliations that don't necessarily agree with each other or with the speakers and their views on other issues. There was a small but visible group of people wearing t-shirts that said Christians for Israel, who wanted to be with us on that day. They wanted to be on the right side of history, maybe even on the right side of God. But we all came together for that couple of hours on a beautiful sunny fall day in peace. You could not help but be amazed by the police presence on and around the site. When I came out of the subway, I saw a line of police cars from Fairfax County, Virginia, including an armored personnel carrier. Then I saw police with dogs, and the SWAT teams with body armor and sniper rifles, and the horseback-mounted police, and the motorcycles, and the helicopters overhead. And I thought, what do they think we're going to do, storm the Capitol or something? Till it occurred to me that they were probably there mostly to protect us from others who wished us harm. The feeling of we are all truly in this together, that's why this last Tuesday was such a step toward redemption. Maybe why those people thought it would be a good idea to bring along a sheet with the blessings to say when the Messiah comes, just in case. Because we took such a big step closer together as a people. We realized that we really need each other, that we are all in this together, and that the greatest blessings are when we manage to behave as if we are all one. The portion this week of Toldos that we read speaks about blessings and how you get blessings. Sometimes we have to wear a little different outfit, out of our comfort zone, or carry ourselves a little differently in order to get the blessings. Is it trickery? Has our Father only one blessing to give? Or does our Father want to give blessings to all his children? A speaker this week in Thornhill said that the Jews are like a tea bag. You have no idea how strong we are until we're in hot water. Let's reveal the secret to ourselves, that we live up to our fullest potential when we are together. May our goodness and our togetherness and our prayers for true peace become infectious and become highly contagious all around the world. Good Shabbos.